Hi art friends, Tim Hodge here, and I'm really happy to announce the release of my new series of lessons with CreatureArtTeacher.com, Storyboarding for TV Animation. I take you through step by step the creative process, from staging your shots to setting up characters for better acting, camera placement, and creating clear facial expressions. And most importantly, putting shots together to tell a story. I even take you through step by step of the creative process on this particular storyboard I've been working on about a pirate and a monkey in a battle of wits over a treasure. But it's not just watching me do storyboards. I've also included some scripts for you to produce yourself. I've included model sheets and location drawings and even an audio track with actors reading the parts so you can cut together your own animatic if you want to. So stay tuned. I can't wait for you to enjoy it. Again, that's storyboarding for TV animation at CreatureArtTeacher.com.
If you ever get to work at a TV studio, you're not going to be expected to come up with stories on your own. You'll be, in fact, given a script that's been honed and rewritten and gotten, hopefully, to where it's just perfect. If you've never seen a script, let's go over what one looks like and why it's written the way it is. This is one we've got here. This is script format. Each little section is written with different indentation and different margins to denote what it is and make it easier to read. This top bit, it's all in caps. It usually starts with either INT or EXT, which means interior or exterior. Occasionally there's one called I/E if it takes place, like somebody's talking through a window to someone outside and it's both interior and exterior, but that's a rare animal. So this one starts off, and this script is actually in your packet. This is one that you're going to get to storyboard on your own time. This is called Little League. Not a creative title, but that's all I could think of. This starts off with the location. Every scene, not every cut, but every scene, every location starts off with the slug line, as it's sometimes called. Slug line or location. It includes time of day. So it's an exterior Little League baseball diamond day. So we know where every scene is. This particular script is one scene long. Now the action descriptions are full margins from right to left. And this one starts off saying, it describes, obviously, what's going on screen. Close up on home plate. The umpire's brush dust off the surface. He stands up. Clear enough. Now notice here we indent quite a bit to show the character who's speaking. Their names are always in the center, always in caps. And what they say is indented with very narrow margins in the middle of the page. It's a lot easier to read if you're holding a script and practicing to read something that's written in a narrow column to practice. If your eyes are having to scan all the way across the page while you're reading aloud, and then you come back to the other end, you skip lines. But also, these margins have helped determine the time length of a script. Generally speaking, the aim is to have one page of script equals a minute of screen time. It's usually a little off from that, but that's the goal. A 2-hour film, usually the scripts are between 115 and 125 pages, give or take. And also the first time a character is mentioned on screen, their name is always in all caps. This allows a production assistant to go through and count how many characters are in the script to see how many, if it's a live action show, how many actors they're going to have to employ, or how many designs they're going to have to draw in the case of animation. So next paragraph, Kelly has her age in parentheses, age 9, walks past the stands that are filled with cheering parents. That should probably be all capitalized because now we know we have a crowd scene. She confidently takes her place in the batter's box. The catcher, Billy, 10, lowers his face mask and squats. So it should very clearly, step by step, explain what the action is. And of course, the dialogue here. And Billy says, well, if it isn't the strikeout queen, this will be quick. So you can read the whole thing yourself. I'm not going to pitch the whole thing to you. But just that opening scene, what image did that generate in your mind? I started off with saying close up on home plate. Now that's not very common too. Usually script writers don't tell you where you need a close up or a wide shot. Occasionally, but it's not the common thing. But if I say close up on home plate, you know we're going to be real close. We're not going to see any people. While the umpire's brush dusts off the surface, he stands up. Now to me, if I were doing this, that would signify a cut to me. We'd just be close on home plate. We'd see the brush go, and then we cut a little wider while the guy stood up and yelled, batter up. But that's where we get into thumbnails. You've got your script. You can read all your dialogue and all the action. Before you start, you should read through the whole thing and get an idea of the whole feel of your story, what the emotional content is, where the jokes are. If you're working on a cartoon, should there be any more jokes? Can you add things to it? I've worked on some shows where they say, no, don't add anything to the script. The script is the way we like it. And others that say, oh yeah, if you can think of something funny, throw it in. Don't write dialogue, because then we'd have to hire the actors to come back and record again. But yeah, if you can think of any more gags, sight gags, throw them in. And some other studios are like, yeah, if you got a better line, we can hire the actors to come back and do a reread. So it all depends on the aesthetic of the studio, of the budget of the show, and things like that. But the first step, at least my working procedure, everybody's got their own. I like to do thumbnails. And those are nicknamed that because they're usually small sketches, about the size of your thumbnail, or about the size of a postage stamp, or a large postage stamp. Now I've given you the template with the thumbnail panels on it. That's a good place to start too. I like to often work actually on the script itself. I will often, if you look at this, I print out the script. And I do my first thumbnails over in the margins. It helps me think through what I want to see. I don't thumbnail the whole thing. I don't go through at every little panel and every shot, but I choose specific shots in the way I think they should be set up. Especially if it's something that has to have a visual gag to it, or if a character enters the scene and I want them to have a powerful entrance, like, oh yeah, I want that shot to be a low shot and looking up. And sometimes I write things down, like notice at the top of this page, I've written, medium shot on Sigil. This is from the 321 Penguins TV show. And a little note here, insert a reaction from Vigil, because there's the script didn't cover reaction shots, but I thought, I'll throw that in. It's a nice addition to what's going on. The scripts don't necessarily cover every little shot. They cover the overall action, but things like reaction shots or how the cutting goes, it's totally up to you. Let's see, going back to here. Oh yeah, I was directing this episode, so I cut out a couple of lines. I didn't think we needed them. On this little line here where it says Mitchell buries his face in his hands. I didn't draw it, I just wrote a little note, a close-up, because I didn't want that in the wide shot. That was an action that needed to be seen really, really clearly. Where's the other one here? Oh yeah, I see the side margins there, seeing how I was staging some jokes. This little bit here, where four characters, after one character says his line, he says something stupid, it mentions the other four characters just stare. Well, I wrote a little note in here that I wanted that to be cuts on each one. So it was like, the guy says something stupid, which one of you took it? And then cut, 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 cut. So I don't make just staging notes to myself, I make editorial notes. Like I said at the beginning, storyboard artists are part editors. You edit before the editor gets it. You can see some of my other thumbnails too as I flip through these. Camera moves, things. And it lets me get, actually, it's not, it lets me get my bad ideas out of the way. Sometimes this is my first pass, and it just, what's on the top of my head. But once I get into drawing it, I realize, I have a better idea now. I'm glad I got that pass out of my head. And sometimes doing little notes like this helps me work out all my blocking and my staging and making sure I'm consistent with my 180, because in some set, this particular set was a little confusing. It wasn't like a simple 3-wall set. It was, in the round, and everybody had their own station, and to make sure when I was cutting over here to over here, that when they looked over their shoulder, it was clear. But let's look at another script. This is one I wrote, so I have permission to use it with you. I'm going to be including a version of this with the class here. This is just my first pass on it, so I'm going to start with it. Again, I'm not real happy with it, so you'll get the fresh take on it. It's about a haunted house. The first couple of lines here, it says, interior haunted house, night. A rat skitters past a moonlit window, casting a long, creepy shadow across the dusty floorboards. Insert shot, a finger rings a doorbell. Ding dong. Back inside, because that was insert shot that was outside. Back inside the entry hall, nothing stirs, nothing but the muffled young voices coming from the other side of the door. So this would be really easy to storyboard because it's just a shot of the door and we hear voices on the outside. It's two kids, brother and sister, arguing, Carter and Jess. Carter says, nobody home, let's go. Jess says, not a chance, I gotta make my quota. Come on, Jess, it's late. We're supposed to be home before dark. Fine, after this house, we'll go home. So that's all shot on the door. That's the way I see it in my head. Then the mail slot flips open, blink, and Jess, 12, peeks in, peering around the dark room. She says, hello, anyone home? Mysteriously, the door swings open, revealing Carter, 10, and his older sister, Jess, still bent over to the mail slot level, wearing a scout uniform. Carter holds the handle of a wagon with a stack of cookie boxes. You getting the picture here? No. Carter says, I'm out of here. She grabs his wrist. Not yet, Carter. You're staying here or I'm telling Mom about the stain on the sofa cushion. Carter says, you know about that? I turned it over. Okay, but let's hurry. They grab a couple cookie boxes and leave the wagon, step into the foyer. Jess practically dragging Carter. Okay, that's just the first page, so that's a good place to start. I'm going to start with my thumbnails. This is what like I said, I usually do on the scribbling on the script, but this is a little easier to see for you guys. I'm going to use gray, and my pencil is, I'm going to use this brush. It's a little more pencil-ish. And I know I've printed out a template for you. It's always been my habit just to draw them. So if you want to use my template, fine. If you want to draw them, that's fine too. But I like to work small because it helps me work faster and get my ideas down quicker, especially if they're bad ideas, because you're going to make mistakes. And one of the best bits of advice I can give is make your mistakes quick. Start working fast. Get your mistakes out of the way. So let's start just a few little thumbnails. The first line is, a rat skitters past a moonlit window, casting a long creepy shadow across the dusty floorboards. Okay, I'll do a couple versions of that. Let's get my window in here. And it'll be dark in here. And then we'll see the rat. And again, I'm just doing a couple. I'm not doing all the drawings. Just thumbnails. Just like this particular drawing, that would represent maybe 6 or 7 panels for me. But it gives me an idea of what I'm going to do later. And then it says, but the casting a long creepy shadow across the dusty floorboards. Well, this is a cool shot and get a close-up of the rat, but we don't see the shadow casting on the floor, and that's kind of cool. I could do a camera move as a rat goes across to crane down. That seems a little excessive for this particular line of action. How about we just, let's stage it like this. Get your window up here and the shadow from, and the light from it, not the shadow, the light from it on the floor. And then when the rat comes over, we'll see the rat shadow down here. It's not making me sing. I'm not buying it. It's just the impact of what we're supposed to see isn't quite there. I really want to see that long shadow. Let's push the perspective a little bit more. So we have the window here. And let's make this the light coming in even bigger. That's getting better. That's kind of fun. Still though, I'm wondering, what if we did a down shot? Because that's really unconventional. Now, at the risk of disorienting our audiences right off the bat, because opening up with a down shot, and if we're just fading into that, that might be a little confusing. People might not, where am I? What's going on? Let's try it. That's a thought. This is a lot of thumbnails for one shot, but this is my thought process. Let's try the opposite thing. What if we got really low? I'm keeping all of these the same angle too. I don't know why. I should try some of the opposite angle, where we've got a really extreme perspective shot here, like this. Looking up at that window, it should be getting smaller at the top. I'm going to try something. This is, even before I finish that, I'm getting an idea for a different way to do it. If we put our vanishing point over to the side, like that, and our window goes over here, casting its light bigger across the floorboards that way. Now doing this lets us see the floorboards a little bit more too, and I like that line in the script. Whoever wrote that is just a genius. I like descriptive scripts like this. On the occasion I get to write for somebody, I really like to make sure that the action is spelled out sentence by sentence, so you almost read each sentence as its own shot. But that's just me. Not everybody works that way. One of the worst things you can ever see in a script, and it's happened to me, when someone just writes, "They fight." What? Now, reading it, you're thinking, oh, that's, yeah, a fight scene. Well, that's 2 words, and that's like half a page at least of action. Now, if you're aiming to get a page of script done a day, that just throws your deadline all off. But anyway, back to this. This might work. I like this low angle. And then this rat can skitter across, and we can see his shadow in that area. I'm going to check that one. I like that. Now, when I go into Storyboard Pro or Photoshop, whichever I do this, I might enhance that a little bit. But generally, that's the the feeling I want. So once I start storyboarding this in Storyboard Pro or Photoshop or whatever, I might enhance this, but generally I think that's the feeling I want to go for. It's a nice view, it's dramatic, it's creepy, which is the feeling I want getting into this because it's a haunted house, but it also shows off that shadow that the script mentioned, so I can really play that up. It didn't seem like just a throwaway line, so I thought it was important. But then we cut outside to see a doorbell ring, finger ring the doorbell. Now, of course, my first thought, and I know it's a little kid's hand, it's the Girl Scout Jess. So I'm just going to do that ding dong with her arm coming in. And I'm going to make that a real decorative doorbell. And it's got to be really creepy too. Now, my first thought is too, should it be straight on? Should we keep up the canted angle? I think it should be straight. I want the comparison, the contrast from inside where everything's creepy and at an angle to something that's straight and conventional for outside. So it's like inside the house is creepy, outside the house with the girl, it's fine. And as I'm saying this and talking about it, I realize too that I need to really play up that comparison. So I am going to expand this first shot into a pan. I want to experience the inside of the house a little bit longer before we see the doorbell. So I'm writing a note down here that says pan. So that way we can pan through the haunted house and see more of it. So get that creepy feeling that we'll put some cobwebs in the foreground and an old candelabra or something. And we'll end up on this shot with the light coming in the window. And that's when we'll see the shadow of the rat. It's my rat sound. We go outside, ding dong. And it's got to be a real creepy sound, of course. But that's up to a sound technician guy. And then we cut to the entry hall. Now, I was seeing this as pretty straight on with that floorboard right there. But then again, I want it also creepy looking. And I know reading the rest of it that there's got to be a mail slot. Wait, I wanted the doorknob. Does it make a difference which side the doorknob's on? Oh well. But this is going to be the first shot. I'm just going to write voices underneath it. Does anybody still have mail slots anymore? Do people still use those? I don't know if people still have their mail delivered that way or not. I see them mostly in TV shows, like one of those things that only exist in film. There. And the next line, okay, we have all the voices, and then the mail slot flips open. And I think we should cut in for a close-up on that so we can actually see her. This is her characters. This is her introduction before we see Oliver. Oliver. And again, I think, should it be just straight like this while she peeks in? Or should we do it at an angle? Like this, and have a little perspective on it so we can see it's a mail slot a little more clearly. And her fingers come in up here. I'm just going to leave that as a question right now. And of course, this isn't an actual assignment for me, but this is the way I would do it. I leave myself little notes like that. Sometimes directors want to see your thumbnails just to see where you are. Sometimes they don't care. They don't want to see it till your first rough pass. But if you've ever got a question, it's a lot easier to show them at this point and say, I don't know which is going to be better. What do you think? but they definitely want to see a rough pass, and that's easier to make changes before you go and do your tie downs. When you first start working at a studio, more than likely the entry-level position is as a storyboard revisionist. And a revisionist is somebody that goes through to make corrections that on somebody else's storyboards, revising. And it could be something very simple like, oh, the character, we've changed the dialogue and this character is going to be talking instead. Redo this drawing with their mouth open. Easy enough. Or, when the storyboard artist, the dialogue hadn't been recorded yet and the actor said it with a different expression, change their expression. Usually it's little stuff like that, or maybe like, oh, the character's riding a bike, and children's television the network says we have to have everybody on a bike wearing a helmet and knee pads and elbow pads. You have to redraw these panels and put the protective gear on them. It's often most like that. Occasionally you get a chance to, like, the scene's not working, you need to reboard it because the storyboards, the artist who did it is on the next episode. So you might get a big break like that. But generally you start out just making corrections and fixing little things like that. He goes, she looks in, says her line, and then the door opens. So she back to this shot I'm going to do arrows connecting those. Same, or, I'm going to say reuse. And I'm not going to go through the whole page like this, but. Oh, door opens on the other side. So I draw two little silhouettes of the kids here, and she's still leaning over, looking in the door. There's a wagon behind him, light coming in, and of course we're going to see their shadows too. This is my thumbnails for shadows, or my shorthand. There. I've talked to a couple of storyboard artists that don't like to do thumbnails. They're like, oh no, thumbnails are a waste of time. Just let me dig into the storyboards. But they work so fast, and their first pass through their storyboards are so rough, it kind of counts like storyboards, and they're throwing as many drawings away or more than they're keeping. So it's still kind of the same process to working, really rough at first, and then slowly tying down and throwing out what you want and don't need. It's just the initial process is on the surface a bit different. I just like doing little drawings like this, and some of it's habit. Occasionally I skip this step and I just launch into my storyboards without even doing a really rough pass. I usually regret it because I'll get about halfway through and I realize I've not kept track of where my characters are, and the 180 is all messed up, or I've gotten characters at a part of the location like, oh no, one of them was supposed to be back over here, and so I've learned my lesson, but I really haven't. I've been doing this for years and years and years, and occasionally I'll still start a scene without doing any thumbnails, and I wish I hadn't. But thumbnails my thumbnails are usually not even quite this detailed. They're usually just the little notations on the corner of the script, and then I go back through and I'll do a really rough pass, because especially working digitally, I can work the panels are big. I'll shrink them down and do them small because I can draw faster. And I can often, depending on the director, will often send those to for approval or notes or feedback, and they can say, yeah, this looks great, or you're feeling a little too sedate, put a little more action in it, or whatever. But like I said, every studio, every director kind of has their own approach, their own way of working on things. I was working on a show once, it was Tom and Jerry, and I really loved working on it. It was a great, it was one that was on Cartoon Network a few years ago. And the whole series was being done in Flash. And it was a great process. I was working with a small studio. It was in Glendale. And and it was a really good interchange working back and forth. But one of the things I learned early on is they said we don't like, well, no, let's put it this way, they said they want all the action to go parallel to the picture plane. No action that was going to be on the z-axis. That was just a stylistic thing, because I asked, because this is the first time I had ever worked on a Flash series, and I thought, is that a limitation of the software, or is that no, it's just a style thing. The director only wanted action that was, back and forth or up and down, nothing deep. I thought maybe, scaling the animation looked weird, but they said no, it's just style. So I went about it that way, and it was a great way to board. And to figure out staging. But I had this one, the reason I'm telling you is I had this one scene where Tom had to cross a street, and it's a variation on a fairly common gag where, Tom's on one curb and he looks both ways, and the street's clear, and he starts walking across the street, and the traffic is and he nearly gets hit, right? So I thought, okay, and I started drawing as wait a second, because Tom's going one way and the cars are going the other way. So if I keep Tom going just straight across, the cars are going to go this way toward toward and away from the picture, the viewer. Or if I did it sideways and had the cars going back and forth like you want, then Tom's coming straight toward the camera. Like, okay, neither one of these is going to work, because that's against the style. I could stage it from overhead and just look at the top of them, and that way, the cars are going this way and Tom's going this way, but that loses some of the impact. You don't get that sense of nearly being hit, because he didn't get hit in it, but he almost did. So I should have asked the director, to see, can I make an exception? But I had worked with them enough. I figured I just made the judgment call, and I figured if they want me to redo it, I will. So I staged it both ways. Not the first two ways. I did one with Tom coming across the street and cars going this way, just barely missing him. And then we cut to the other shot with him coming walking toward the camera, and the cars going back and forth this way. It was really dynamic. I thought it was really funny. And then we cut to the side shot again, where he finished crossing the street, and on the other side, and he was all frazzled. But for those two shots, I broke the style rules for impact's sake. They never said anything, so I suppose they like it. But yeah, it was an interesting conundrum. And then again, I could have shown them my thumbnails, and I probably should have. It worked out though. Another thing to consider when you're storyboarding from a script, you're going to be dealing a lot with dialogue, right? And your first impulse will be to always have the character who's speaking on camera. It's a natural thing to think that, like, oh, if character A is speaking, put him on camera. Then character B speaks, we cut to them, or we'd have a share with a two shot, and they just go back and forth. So our bear character, our nameless bear, boy, that looks like Baloo. My other drawings didn't. I've forgotten what the model sheet looks like now. Don't worry, the model sheet will not look like Baloo. So he has a line. You see? And then we cut to the other side, and maybe the down shot while the park ranger is watching, listening, talking to him. He's like, but I was hungry. And she's like, but you can't eat the food of the campers. Yeah, these are thumbnail quality sketches here. But then again, you see the energy here, you see the acting. Yeah, but I was hungry. You can't eat the camper's food. But it was lying there. Blah, 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 blah. And it gets really kind of dull after a while, just cutting back and forth. And there are instances where that could be staged, and depending on the scene, on how it's written, that it could be really, really funny. But in most instances, that gets old fairly quickly. So to alleviate that, obviously having the two shot and having them, on camera together, over the shoulder, whatever, is works really well. Or always find opportunities to do this is to have the camera on the non-speaking character. So having them listen, watching for a reaction shot. When if the park ranger, let's put her in the foreground here, kind of an over-the-shoulder shot here. And she's upset because he's really crossed the line this time. It's not about eating the camper's food. That's a Yogi Bear story. So we're stealing plots when we do that. And she's accusing him of something. Joyriding in her Jeep. Make sure you have a shot whenever you can, not all the time. To show the reaction. Reaction shots are extremely important to show character, to show the story progression, because stories are about action and reaction. And yes, you could have one character say something and then cut to the other one and have, after they finish saying it, to get, that reaction shot. He's really upset by this. He didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, or he's in real trouble now. But this kind of shot is so much more impactful when it's over the other character's dialogue. When she's, reading in the riot act, saying, "You don't even have a driver's license, you could have hurt somebody, blah, 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 blah." While she's saying that, because what she's saying, we all get it. We understand why she's upset. And the information she's giving isn't terribly important to the plot. We don't need to know exactly what he did wrong. We probably already saw it in the previous scene. What we need to see is his reaction. So while she's unloading on him, show his face, watch him melt, or whatever the emotion is. And I'm going for the negative reactions in this instance. Find something happy. Let's do some comedy. But yeah, it can be either the over-the-shoulder shot and having the non-speaking person's face show, or just cut to them while the other person's talking. Also, the idea that while two people are talking, maybe it's about something that's not that important. Have a third character doing something that is important to the script. While we've got a stump here. We're back in the woods with our park ranger and the bear, but we've got our friend the porcupine. They're shorthand for a porcupine. And we've got our park ranger here. And they're talking, blah, 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 blah. yeah, it's going to be fall soon. You're going to have to hibernate. And what? I don't know what hibernation is. But while they're talking, over in the background, this is our bear character, by the way. And he's tiptoeing, and his shoulders are hunched up. Because for some reason, we all think if we do this, people don't see us as much. So, he's a little, there we go. While they're talking over here, he sneaks off. And you can keep their conversation playing in the background while our bear is over here. You know, going through someone's backpack. You know, just digging out. This is a zipper. And digging out the sandwiches. Yeah. There's a sandwich. Now, was this opportunity, this is a real specific moment, going to arise in a script? If you look for it. And it may happen, it may not. If you find a script that the dialogue is a little uninspiring, or you maybe feel it's a little, we already know this information, it's not very funny, find a moment you can think of another gag to play off screen and put the camera over there and see if you can sell the gag. Maybe they'll use it, maybe they won't. It's worth a shot. But yeah, anytime you get, you know, a script that you think could be better, it's your job to make the story better. When you take the script, you're not just illustrating it, you're enhancing it. You're taking it to the next level. You're finding the comedy that may be buried between the lines and bringing it out. In a case like this, I've had scripts where that I was working on with a studio where you know, the scenes just kind of ended. Like there was one where all the lights blew out in a city. Oh, it was a village, and you know, and two characters left in the dark. And they just said the script just said the lights go out because of the previous, you know, something that somebody was doing in the previous scene. And that's a weird ending for a scene, just to have everything go in the dark because two people, you know, two characters were, you know, sharing some, you know, a smoothie or something, and they look up, the lights get real bright and go poof, and it was like lights go out. I'm like, well, that's weird. Of course, they were integral to the plot, but I thought, so when I had the lights go out, I had just their eyes appear in the dark and they blink at each other. And a simple enhancement like that, just this little button to the end of the scene, the studio loved it. Like, oh, perfect. It just made it a little, it didn't just leave them in the dark. For some reason, it made it funny, just to see what their situation was, to get a reaction, because it's all about action and reaction. That's what stories are. Whenever you're working on a TV show, or when you're in show business, there is the business side of it. In other words, every show has a budget. And that means there are going to be limitations. Let me explain some of what I mean. Let's go back to our shot, our story of the pirate, our pirate booty story. A shot like this seems easy enough, but if you do a lot of them, we've got a lot of effects here. This isn't just animation of a character rowing. You have to be also cognizant there's another animator that has to come in to do these effects, and maybe there's a compositing issue here too with getting the reflections and things like that. So, and I've run into that. Water is one of the biggest problems I've ever come up against continually within in shows. If I were working on this show, on this short with a studio, I can guarantee you they would say, can you use less water because it's expensive, but of course, or it's going to cost you, and I'd have to make sure there was a budget for it. The first thing I ever directed was Lyle the Kindly Viking when I was working at Big Idea, and that was a show that was takes place on the water. And yeah, water's expensive. And I didn't realize that at the time. I thought computer animation, you can do everything. You don't have to worry about the budget. You just type it in and tell water. But it wasn't necessarily the surface of the water that was expensive. It was all the interaction, the animation where the ripples and the spray comes off the edge of the boat. But the script was written by the head of the company that it took place on the water. So we couldn't get around it and say, oh no, it's not a Viking story after all. It's we have to do it. So we had to limit our shots. And the way I did it, I've seen this done in live action films too, where they fake a boat being on the water, because yeah, it's a pain filming real stuff on the water. So I did a couple of shots. If I can remember what the Viking boat looked like. That's water. You have the big sail up here. So we did a couple of shots with full sail on the water. Everybody on board, and lots of spray coming up and ripples and reflections, and they were very time consuming. But we knew we couldn't do that every shot. So we got creative. After we had this opening shot with the pirate boat and everything got done, with the music going and the water and all the ripples, every time after that we saw the boat. I can do this. We framed it like this. It was, we never saw the water line after that. We kept there were a few other shots, but for the most part, we tried wherever we could not to show the water line with where the water hits the boat, because that's where the time was spent, and that's what caused more money. So even when little Junior Asparagus was rowing his boat, we had one wide shot where you saw him rowing, and then the rest of the shots we were inside the boat with him like this. I can't remember how big the prow of his boat was, and he's sitting there, rowing, I love it, holding on to oars with no hands. But we had a nice close-up shot like this, and you saw the surface of the water in the background, because that was a lot easier to do. See through them. There. So shots like this were a way to not scare the animators and go, oh no, we can't do that. It's going to take forever. We don't have the time to finish it. But you always have to consider budget. And unfortunately, nothing's free. Even in the other VeggieTales episode, one of the other ones I did called The Ballad of Little Joe, we had a limit on how many sets we had time to build. That was a very low budget show, and I was told I could have, I don't remember, it was like 7 different sets, and and that was the interior ones. Like, okay, well, I have this person's house, I have this, I have the jail, I have this, and I had more locations in the script than I had budget to build scripts. I mean, to build the sets, and then because that takes time, even though they're not real, they're virtual. It takes time to build and to texture and to light. So I came up with a solution. I had one more location, one extra location in the script than I had budget for. So there were 2 scenes that took place in a large buildings. One was inside the Rootin' Tootin' Pizza place, which was like our kid version of a saloon, and also the mayor's office. So what I did is they were actually the same set. If we could look, if I did a camera map here, what I did is I built it and I had them designed it in 2 parts, or I had an artist design it in 2 parts. I wasn't doing everything. Where I did this imaginary dotted line diagonally down the middle. There was a stage over here where the singers sang, and then the soda fountain, the bar was over here, and there was a door over here. The front door was over here somewhere. I don't remember if we saw anybody come in. So this half of the location was over here, was all the pizza place. Over here, it was I had different wallpaper. I had some different kinds of tables for people, or just chairs, I think it was. I don't think I had tables. I had the mayor's desk over here, and of course there are windows. And when I was shooting in the restaurant, I made sure the cameras were, I made sure the 180, and this was basically my 3-wall set, the camera was always facing, this way, or, never back the other way. And then when we went into the mayor's office, all the cameras were facing this way. So I got a 2 for 1. So understanding budget, as boring as it sounds, is always important, but it also forces you to be creative, to find ways around your hurdles. We talked about camera moves a lot before, and just like little things like a drift, or like just a subtle drift, can be expensive. It has its own expense, because in computer animation anyway, because usually you render the background separately in just one pass of it, and then composite the characters over it and all their shadows and reflections or whatever. But if the camera moves, then you have to re-render the background for those frames. So in a low budget show, we try to keep camera moves to a minimum, but I like camera moves. I like to do just a subtle drift in, or when a character leaves, to have the camera pan with them just a little bit before they exit. So what I would often do when we were doing VeggieTales in the house is I would have them shoot the scene just a little bit loose, a little bit wider than I wanted. So in editorial, we could push in just a little bit, just 5% or so, not enough to to make the picture get start breaking up and get digitized and blurry. But it gave me enough room that where the camera didn't see, I could move the camera around just enough to get a little drift or a little slow zoom in editorial. So I was able to work around even those hurdles. But that's just talking about 3D shows. And 2D shows, you have the same limitations, because for every shot that you plan, I want this to be a 2D episode when I finally do it. Every shot requires a new background, right? Somebody's going to have to paint this island, and somebody's going to have to paint this close up, and somebody's going to have to paint this shot of the beach, and that's just for one shot. There's no other shot that reuses it. So in 2D shows, you generally try to find reuses of backgrounds. So it's easier to set up shots again. That's why a lot of, especially older 2D shows, there's a lot of repetitive shots, because it's a lot cheaper. And yeah, this one, I really, really want to do it, but I know it's going to be expensive, especially shots like this that are one-offs. I don't use this shot anywhere else in the show, but I really want it. So we'll see what happens. But this particular shot, I reuse this one a lot because it's an important location where he finds the treasure and digs it up and then goes back later and doesn't find it. So I find places like that where I can reuse it, or the places where we're just in the jungle. Hopefully we'll be able to rebuild or just use bits and pieces from several backgrounds to make extra locations that we didn't necessarily plan for. And I'm talking like this is in production. That would be cool. But again, from this shot to this shot, whole new background. So I've been doing this long enough. Whenever I storyboard, I'm always thinking about budget in my head. And unfortunately, that's kind of a creativity killer. And I don't like having to do that, but I do. Occasionally, when I'm working on somebody else's show, though, that I know that I'm not sure what the budget is, it's fun just to set that aside and to go all out and say, I'm just going to put the camera where I want and call for whatever camera moves or effects or whatever I want that makes the shot right. And if they want me to pull back on it later, that's fine. But I have to give it my all and give the show exactly what it needs to tell the story. But But then again, sometimes limitations help you be creative and find creative ways to tell the same story. There's another aspect in film and television, a type of scene that you're going to run into a lot. It's very popular. It's called the montage. And I'm sure just saying that, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen those a lot. Usually they're training montages, somebody learning a new skill. And there'll be a few shots of learning to do whatever and failing at it, and over the course of singing a song, the person gets better and better and better. One of the most famous ones is in the old movie Rocky. But there are joke versions of that too, where the montage is building a barbecue or building a doghouse or something, and there's all the shots usually set to music of somebody sawing and hammering and screwing, and then the song ends and we pull back to reveal a really bad job. So it's the opposite of the training montage where someone gets good at it. A montage like that, they're bad. The challenge is, when you find something like that, is to find new ways to do it and to figure out a new way to present it that doesn't feel like you're copying everybody else. The twist on it is a great way to do it when you are able to find a montage that the ending is a surprise. Or if you follow something really, really closely, to make a parody of it, to find a famous montage like the one in Rocky and copy those shots, but do them a little bit differently to make a joke out of it. Like the scene where he's, running up the steps, have somebody run, he's all victorious, I'm running up the steps, and have a troop of, Girl Scouts run past somebody like, oh, these little kids are faster than I am. That's a bad idea. But, shots like that are so common they've become trite. So to find a fresh way to present them is a challenge. So I don't have any for sure answers, except to keep drawing and drawing and drawing and find a new way to present it. So working with the script, remember just a few simple things. First, read through your script. Understand the story, understand where the highs and lows are and where things are headed, what you're going to get to at the end from the beginning. Find ways to enhance the script, places to put in gags or emotional bits or any other enhancements to make it better. Thumbnail, always thumbnail. Even if you're doing it full size and just going fast, get your bad ideas done, get them done quickly, get them out of the way, and figure out the best ways to present things. Understand the limitations of your budget when you have to. That's the downside, but also limitations force you to be more creative. All right? And with all that, most of all, don't forget your audience and have fun. Now we're going to talk about the anatomy of a story and how to create plot and resolution.